What would you do if you were lost in the woods, no knowledge of wild edibles, nothing to eat on you, and no immediate hope for recovery? How would you sustain yourself? What would you eat? That's exactly what I want to talk about in today's video. Years ago, the Army developed what's called the Universal Edibility Test, and it's designed for just this purpose. It's for field use and to help an individual identify the difference between edible and poisonous plants. And today, I'm going to go ahead and give you the down and dirty on how to conduct that test. So let me go ahead and note, it is a lengthy process. It takes about a little over 24 hours to complete. So it's going to be a lengthy process. However, if you're doing this, chances are you've got the rest of your life to get it right. So it's worth it. Another thing I want to make a note of is before you even start or consider doing this test, you need to make sure you have an abundance of the plant that you're going to test. It doesn't do a lot of good if you only have a few little plants available to you. You test them and you find you eat them, but it's only going to give you minimal calories. So you want to find something you have a good abundant source of before you test it. Also, make sure you stay and watch the full video because at the end I'm going to go over some other important tips about this test. So the very first part of this test is fasting. You want to fast at least 8 hours, no food in your system for at least 8 hours before you do this. And the reason is that way you know that any reactions you get are from this plant and not potentially something you ate earlier or in combination with this. So the next step we want to do is we want to go ahead and divide our plant. You want to separate all the parts, your buds, flowers, roots, leaves. You want to separate each of these. And the reason for this is because depending on the plant, various plants, certain parts are edible, certain parts aren't. For instance, the rhubarb has poisonous leaves. So when you do this, you're only going to be testing one part of the plant throughout this entire time. Okay, so the first test we're going to physically do is we're going to do what's called a sniff test or a smell test. And that's certainly not conclusive, but it'll give us some hints. So if it smells offensive, off odor, moldy. If it's moldy, you want to change it out. It might just be a bad specimen you picked out. But if the plant itself smells as such, probably best to move on. Additionally, if it has a pear or bitter almond scent, that's an indicator of cyanide. And so it's best to go ahead and leave that one alone and move on as well. Okay, so the next step we're going to do, I think we're at step 4, is we're going to do what's called a skin test. I want to break this thing up, crush up, let's say I'm doing a leaf, crush up that leaf and rub some of the juices or even put it on and hold it on a sensitive area like my forearm right here, underside of your forearm. I hold it there for at least 15 minutes, and then I'm going to wait 8 hours and see if I have any kind of reaction. Yeah, if I have a reaction, blister, anything like that, then we're done there. But I also want to go ahead and try if I have a cream, Benadryl type cream, go ahead and use that. If not, I want to at least get a good water cold compress and just hold it on there and try and minimize and mitigate what I just did. Okay, so now step 5, we're going to go ahead and cook it up. Certainly some plants can be eaten raw, but in general, it's harder on the digestion and can aggravate you. And some plants have to be cooked to be eaten. So we're going to go ahead and cook up a small portion and ready it for the further steps. All right, next step is called the lip test. I'm going to put a portion of that cooked on my outer lips, hold it there for 3 minutes. No reaction. I'm going to go ahead and place it in my mouth. I'm not going to swallow. I'm not going to chew. I'm just going to hold it there for 15 minutes. If I have no reaction, I'm good to move on to the next step. Okay, so I'm good up to this point, so I'm going to go ahead and start chewing it. Still not swallowing. I'm going to chew it around, see if I have any reaction. If I do, I'm going to immediately spit it out, rinse my mouth out, and call it good. If not, I'll move on to the next step. Finally, the next step, I'm going to go ahead and swallow it. I'm going to observe myself over the next 8 hours. If I have any reaction, I'm going to try and vomit it up, and I'm going to hydrate and try and flush that out of my system as well. If not, no reaction, I'm good to try the final and concluding step on it. Final step, I'm going to go ahead and consume a better portion, about a quarter cup, which is about a palm full. Consume it and wait 8 hours and just make sure it sits well with me. And that's it. If we made it to this point, we can probably consider that plant safe to eat, but there's still a few areas we want to caution on. A point of note here is this is a survival test. Implication is you could die. It's good to remember that some plants can have accumulated toxicity, so I still like to consume relatively small portions if I'm not familiar with these things. Finally, let's go ahead and hit on a few general tips about wild edibles. A good general rule is you want to avoid plants with thorns, shiny leaves, or fine hair on their stems. Also, milky sap as well as yellow and white berries are often best to avoid. And that's it. The Universal Edibility Taste Test, or Universal Edibility Test. It's a great tool to add to your toolbox. Ideally, you never have to use it. Hopefully, you school yourself up and you get highly skilled in foraging and know the wild edibles in your area or any area that you might find yourself lost in. However, it's a great thing to have in your toolbox so that you're never left without hope. There's always some steps you can take to potentially save yourself self-recovery and make yourself out of any situation you may find yourself in. That's it for this one. Until next time, stay safe out there.